Hi everyone, my name is Jason Kirchick, and I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to speak with you here today. I had reached out to Sikander after learning about the Mobile Critical Care Recovery Program study while conducting my own research actually for my graduate program capstone project, which focused on communication barriers of awake mechanically ventilated patients in the ICU. My hope in communicating with Dr. Khan was to see what, if any, possibilities might exist to help impact the work his team was doing and learn more about the research process as someone very interested in developing and growing my own skills as a public health professional and nurse researcher. I also took the opportunity to share my personal story with Dr. Khan, and I think as we both look at what collaboration opportunities may or may not exist, to at least come to this group today and share my story and a little bit about my professional background. Um, so I'm currently completing my graduate studies in public health at the University of New England and have actually just finished my integrated public health practicum and presented my final capstone project last week, which was very exciting and uh, have a strong feeling of relief now. I have two courses left before I graduate this upcoming May, which seems really close right now. Uh, I am a nurse and received my associate's degree in nursing at Vermont Technical College and completing credits right now for my BSN at Sacred Heart University. Uh, I also hold an undergrad degree in healthcare management from Champlain College and am completing my application materials for the nursing research PhD program at Vanderbilt University. So, needless to say, I have a lot of exciting things on the horizon. One of the reasons I am so passionate about the work your group is doing is related to my own personal experience as an ICU and ARF survivor. I spent 2 months in an induced coma, and when I was finally able to have an understanding of what had actually happened to me, I had a sincere desire to go into nursing and commit my life to public service, just serving something greater than myself. And I think a large part was for sincere thanks that my life had been spared and from following, a very serious and traumatic event. The medical and nursing care I received was just phenomenal. And having experienced being young and sick and depending on others to provide such intimate and personal care was humbling, often humiliating, and sometimes even scary. But my story is certainly one of survival, and I've been told often both inspiring and motivating. So, what happened? Well, in January of 2014, I got the flu. I later found out it was the H1N1 influenza virus. I had not gotten my flu shot that year. I fell sick over the weekend, had called into work Monday and Tuesday, and by Wednesday was not feeling any better, and so went to urgent care. They had prescribed me antibiotics, told to go home, drink plenty of fluids, get rest, call my primary care provider in a couple of days if I wasn't feeling better. And a couple of days went by and things turned bad very quickly. I was unable to retain fluids and my temperature was over 105 degrees. Um, my family knew that things were not getting better and that, it was getting serious. Somehow they were able to get me into the car and take me to the emergency room. And once I got there, they ran all kinds of tests, had no idea what was going on with me. The initial test for the flu actually came back negative, and that happens often actually. Um, I was put on CPAP, my respiratory and renal systems were shutting down. And so, they had made the decision. They transported me to our level 1 trauma center. And when I arrived, was quickly received by the critical response team and intubated. My family was told to prepare their goodbyes, to expect the worst and pray for the best. My body was in multi-organ failure and fighting sepsis. I was in acute respiratory failure and my renal system failed. I had to go on dialysis. My cardiovascular system was collapsing. That's 3 systems down. which made the possibility of survival low. What followed was 2 months of hell that no one could have ever anticipated. The question on so many minds was, how does a young man in the prime of his life die from the flu? Uh, and in that 2 months, I earned the title of being the sickest patient and was the first of many new protocols and treatments for the hospital. They had used a technique called proning, where they place a patient on their belly in hopes of shifting fluid from the lungs and allowing alveoli to open and allow for better oxygenation. I had chest tubes placed. They took about 6 liters of fluid. About 1 month in the ICU, I was the first patient in the state to acquire a special form of antibiotic-resistant infection, which caused the epidemiologist and the infection prevention team to scramble to figure out what was going on. And so early on, I had a doctor working on my case nonstop to get a parenteral form of influenza vaccine released under compassionate usage with the FDA. So, there were a lot of efforts going on. Most were last-ditch efforts, last resorts. But the entire team was fighting just so hard for my recovery. The days following waking up in the ICU, was battling pain, delirium, finding ways to communicate with everything that was going on with my body, and just trying to comprehend that 2 months of my life had just gone by. That was really, for me, hard to fathom sometimes. I started mobility exercises actually in the ICU early on. And I think after a couple of weeks of coming out of the induced coma, I was transferred to inpatient rehab, which was a really big deal. This is actually the day I left the ICU to go to rehab. They had an honorary send-off with the hallways lined up with just all the staff and people applauding and giving me hugs. It really was a warm send-off, an emotional one too. I think looking back and hearing stories from the staff, there were so many days where the outcome just looked so dark. And the entire team was working so hard for my survival and were so personally, invested. And I think they felt a sense of pride and a lot of relief when I finally left. The one message I leave most people with after experiencing a critical illness and long hospital stay is that no one prepares you for what life is going to be like when you go home. The majority of the psychological trauma I experienced was when I got home. I had lost the entire support of an interdisciplinary hospital team as well as constant visitors. And I think my friends and family felt that when I got home, everything was back to normal, but nothing was normal. The strain and the trauma of the event just, greatly impacted me, my family, and relationships. And I really had to fight as hard as ever to try to get myself back to me. And so one of the things that I was so excited about in the work your team is doing is that you're really looking at people once they leave the ICU environment just to try to get their lives back on track and hopefully improve those outcomes. In the process, the lessons I've learned along the way certainly have forever changed my perspective of life. I'm grateful for each day and don't take my health for granted. In a little over a year, I've lost over 100 pounds. I've kept it off and have found a passion for running with friends and family. I remember the first race I actually ran. When I finished, I sat on the grass and cried because I remembered how many people thought I'd never be able to walk again, let alone run. So, every little success along the way were, felt like, big prizes. And so, it's been a turning point for me. And, I use my story to impact others, and educate as well as I can. Looking at some of these pictures actually on here, on the far right there, that's me. I had traveled to Lima, Peru, and to Cusco on a medical service trip, bringing medical aid and doing assessments of people in these communities that have, you know, just live in poverty and have such limited access to healthcare. And it was a really rewarding trip. In the far other corner there, that's me with some of the children and some of the community, and then just other pictures of different runs I've been on with family and friends, and even my nursing colleagues. So just to finish on something a little positive there. I did want to talk a little bit about my current activities and research experiences I've been involved with. After my experience as a patient, I was one of the first to join our patient family advisory group at the University of Vermont Medical Center. We started out with about 10 advisors, and now we have over 150, impacting all facets of our healthcare system here, providing patient and family-centered care perspectives. So it's work I'm extremely passionate about. And through this work, I've been involved on endless research projects and sit on executive steering committees, as well as the advisory board for the College of Nursing and Health Sciences at the University of Vermont. In my capstone project, I did a lit review and reported on the strengths and limitations of current efforts for addressing communication barriers in the ICU, and proposed an intervention using the public health framework, which involved gathering all the key stakeholders to brainstorm solutions and share experiences that could lead to an intervention. And then building on my capstone project, I'm working on a systematic analysis study to investigate how the 10 essential public health services can actually be utilized to address various health topics. I submitted an abstract to the Global Network of Public Health Nurses, and it actually was approved for oral presentation. So I'm going to be presenting in Nairobi, Kenya, in Africa this spring. And I'm really excited about that because I've been to Australia, South America, and Europe, but excited to add another important continent to my list of travel experiences. And in closing, get your flu shot. It's not too late. I had to finish with that. So thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions or feedback others have at this point.